George Green, Superintendent of Schools here in Lisbon. This is actually our third informational meeting in regard to our bond referendum and renovation proposals. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank a few people. I wanted to thank all of my central office staff for helping with the mailings, sending out the flyers. The copy that you have this evening was one that was sent out to all members of the community. And the printouts and stuff, I also wanted to thank Heather Wilmot for helping organize. She was the one that greeted you this evening. All members of the school committee for all their work and effort on this. I'm hoping, since the last time we met, there's a number of changes. The most significant change is the actual cost of the project. And I know that a number of you are here this evening to hear that information and are going to be interested to see what that information, what that actually is. And that is probably the most important paper this evening for people who are interested in the tax impact is the handout, the spreadsheet that we hand out. It's a large piece of paper. The reason why we created such a large handout is because there are a lot of numbers, and I'm going to do my best this evening to explain those to you. Because for me, I can look at that and I see, what the cost is and all the different savings and the interest and the bonds and different types of bonds. For other people, it's difficult. So at the end, we have questions. If there's anything on there that you see you have questions about, please feel free to ask those at the end of the presentation. Or feel free, if you don't feel comfortable standing in front of people, feel free to contact me. And my contact information is on the flyer. There's a phone number and an email address. So with that, I'll get started. But first and foremost, I wanted to thank everyone for taking time out of your schedules to be here this evening. As I mentioned before, this is the third evening that we have scheduled to talk about this proposal. It actually started out as we shared our new strategic educational plan, and we talked about our capital plan. And in that, I talked about the timeline and some of the work that we've done with the gymnasium. We started, I did a history, or we did a history at the last informational meeting, which for those people who, this is your first meeting, we've recorded it. We're recording this evening's meeting as well. So we did record that. We provided a lot of history on, and I know I have some questions that people have asked over the last couple of weeks. But for those of you who are interested, we will have all these videos available for you to watch, and you can see the information. So those people that are not attending this evening would have that option. The evening is set up. I'm going to give an overview on the guaranteed performance contract, and this is an agreement that the town and Lisbon School Department have joined together to have or work with Siemens Industries to do some work here in both the town buildings and also in the schools. What a guaranteed performance contract is they put together projects, they go through your system, they look at your lights, they look at your heating, they look at all these different things, and they put together proposals, and through the energy savings, those proposals are paid for through energy savings. So, and if they say we're going to save $10,000 and we don't save, we only save $8,000, because it's a guaranteed contract, they would pay us the $2,000 difference. So there's no new money with any of this work. And this is actually critical to the whole plan, because as some of you may or may not know, over the last several years, we've put over almost $2 million worth of renovations into the high school without going out and asking for any new money. The only bond that we went out for was for the front entrance, the side and the windows, and we used an expiring bond and the lease amounts or the lease money that we had for those old portables. We combined those two, and that's how we came up with the $350,000. It's a QSCAB or QSCB bond that's on that handout. I'll explain that a little bit. But that guaranteed performance contract is critical to this effort, and one of the driving forces behind why the school committee is feeling this is the time to move forward with this proposal. I do have some updated costs. I just mentioned I was going to be talking about the local tax impact. I do have some updated costs on the track, the gymnasium. The gymnasium is actually in a phase, because we've been working on this so long, We are in the schematic design phase. I'll talk a little bit about that. The track, because of the weather, because of all the snow, it's been difficult to get people to give us actual estimates. So what we've done is, in this evening, I'll be talking about a bond for $500,000. But again, those are based on very high estimates on what the total project would be. Now that the snow is, hopefully most of that will be gone, companies will be able to go down to the track area and measure it out and then give us actual quotes. And same with the main track antennas. As soon as we do next week, when we present this during the public hearing, if we receive approval from the town council, then they would go through, main track antennas would go through and give us an actual a proposal, or actually a quote on the work that needs to be done. Another critical part of this evening has been the impact that our existing bonds have on this actual proposal. And it actually came at the last public information meeting. But anyway, a community member had said, what do you do with the interest on your bonds? What do you do with the old bonds? Straight there and back. And what we've done with it is we just had, whenever we had a bond expire or the interest forever, we just rolled it over into savings. So it's helped keep the cost of our budget down. But there's actually, if you look at that, what the actual cost of the two projects there's a certain amount to that. But because each year we have a significant amount of interest coming off the other two bonds, the actual cost or the impact on local taxes is far less than what I've shared with you. And so I wanted to update that, and that's a big piece of this project, and especially if you can utilize that money to do certain things. I'll talk a little bit about that. The other thing is the construction timelines, how long it will take to do these projects. I have a couple of slides on that. The remaining schedule for the bond referendum, again, I mentioned the public hearing, and then there's a timeline for the June referendum, which is aligned with our budget validation referendum. And I do have an update on what the school budget, or what the impact on your taxes for the school budget will be for this year as well. There's a lot of people who have approached me and said they've been asked by community members about this and different questions. I have some clarifying questions on that. The biggest question is, why are we doing this now? And I'll answer that when we get to that particular slide. And then at the end, we'll open it up for questions and comments from the community. And hopefully we can, again, this is all going to be recorded. And once we have those questions, if I can't answer them tonight, I'll do my best to get in touch with you directly and get those answers to you. So everybody, I hope, has those 3 items. The flyer is just a copy of what we sent back. One of the pieces to answer and the clarifying question was the insert, the one little piece insert. And then the piece that I'm going to do my very best to explain to you is the actual spreadsheet on the interest and the bonds that we currently have in the 2 that we're proposing. So this is going to be a big piece, and the insert itself will be a big piece to tonight's presentation. The first piece, as I mentioned before, the guaranteed performance contract. We run a lot of school systems in the state. Our finding is that they don't have enough money to do a lot of renovations, and towns as well. They can't do a lot of renovations to their infrastructure. So what these companies, these large companies are doing is they're coming in and they're saying that if you take your energy savings, for instance, these lights, there's all kinds of different types of fluorescent lights, heat units, different things like that. There's all kinds of pieces to that. When these companies will come in, look at what you have for buildings, look at where they feel you have excess energy costs, and they come up with these projects, and then through those projects, they determine the amount of savings. And so what ends up happening is instead of spending, like switching over from oil, like most people may or may not know, that high schools, actually all of our buildings will be on natural gas. We're fortunate because we're right off 196 and we're able to run a line a few years ago to the high school and to the middle school. And then now, central office will be hooked up in the spring to it's on propane now, but we switched over to natural gas there. The savings in fuel oil alone, especially this winter, were significant. And so what they're saying is, if you're going to save that money, then you take that money and then you do these projects. And then that saves you more money. It's usually a 10-year window, So you get what we're looking at is we qualify for around $900,000 in a very low, like a 1% interest bond or loan. And so what we would do is we'd be able to use, once they give us our projects, we would pick those projects. This project saves this amount, $10, this project saves $20, and then overall, those $30 would pay for $10,000 for realistic $30,000. Those $40,000 is going to pay for all those projects. So there's no new money involved, and you get all that work done. So that's, again, that's a big piece. And so the most important thing for you to know is that these improvements are all paid for through the guaranteed energy savings. So there's no new money added to the budget, and then you'll get that much work done. And you can do, one of the other pieces is that through this, what I learned actually late this afternoon, is that they will come in and they could turn some of the project, the gymnasium, like the heating, the electricity, the plumbing, things like that, they could actually incorporate into this project. And so once we have specific designs, they can come in, and so the cost will go down, and that would mean less money that you'd have to take out, or you'd have to take out in a bond. So again, this is a big piece of why we feel that we're ready to move forward with this proposal. For the track, not a whole lot of change here, except for again, the all-weather running track. Main track and tennis will be coming in once it's approved by the town council. Then they would come in and give us a formal proposal that they estimate, and they feel that that's pretty firm on what it costs for the track. The latest piece is the actual field event and the equipment. People were asking, what about this, like in the discus or whatever. The install and the equipment that you would put in there is around $40,000. The one piece is the fencing, and we haven't had any formal quotes, but we did receive an estimate from one company who, I'm not sure if they actually measured it or not, but they gave us a quote of around $25,000. Now I think that's low. We've been in these informational meetings before. I've had other companies come in and for other projects, and knowing that what we need to do to make sure that the main gate is redone, and then making sure that we have the right 4-foot, the rubberized, the coating fencing or whatever around the track. I believe that amount to be more. So the fencing and the all-weather track itself are still estimates until people can get down here. But again, that's at what, $415,000. We have a bond for $500,000. That's what we go up for until we get firmer numbers. As we move forward, we have other informational nights. That would be the conversation that we would have once we start getting actual numbers, and then we would know exactly what the bond would be. But for tonight, we're estimating that we would ask for $500,000 for that particular bond proposal. Now this is when we start talking about what the actual, or what the cost would be for a 10-year bond. And I did present to the school committee that for this one, as many of you know, I have an issue with paying interest, a lot of interest on smaller bond. So instead of including it in a 20-year bond for the high schools, instead of combining both projects, I went with a 10-year bond just because it's less interest. Now, at 10 years, one thing about bonds is that the first year you usually you don't pay the whole amount, you pay the interest or it's a smaller amount. So for this one, for the track alone, and this is information I didn't have at the last meeting, is that 2014, 2015, the cost to you for the track bond would be $4,687. Now in 2015 and 2016, that's when you get the actual, you get the main amount, and you also get the interest, and that goes to $58,775. And that's obviously 2015, 2016. So $58,775 based on the 2013-14 mill rate would be the equivalent of 0.13 mils, or $13 per $100,000 just for the track. And that is what you have to pay. Again, as I mentioned before, with the interest, it's going to be a different amount when you combine the two, but I'll hopefully do a good job of explaining that. So the track would be around $13 per $100,000 valuation, and that is based on 13-14 numbers. And I know that one question I was asked is what happens with reevaluation. For those people, what happens in 2 years when it's finalized. Unfortunately, the only numbers I have, I can try to get those, but I think the only numbers I have are 13, 14 numbers. So that's what I'm using. So if anybody has that question, unfortunately, I won't be able to answer that until I would have to ask the town manager to find out what that would look like. The gymnasium, the estimated cost, and this one's, because we've been working on this for so long, we've had the architects and engineers, they've updated this cost. This is much, this is probably closer to actuals. It was $5,707,864. We are currently, because we've been working on this for a while, we're actually in the schematic design phase. There's two parts to that. One of the things that was actually brought up tonight, but one of the things that was brought up at the last information meeting was having the bleachers on both sides of the gym. And we did ask the engineer what that would look like. And what happens is through all this, there's programming meetings. We've met with the staff, and we've asked the coaches and the gym teachers and stuff, what do you need for your classes? And then the next piece, they're going to design floor plans, they're going to design the different elevations, because the biggest part of that cost, a lot of people have asked, $5.7 million to build a gymnasium in town for a lot less than that. It's really all of the changes that have to happen. There's a lot of groundwork out here that has to be done, but also a lot of work that has to be done underneath here. They have to get it up to code. You have to have restrooms, you have to have storage. There's moving the weight room. There's a officials room. There's visiting locker room. So there's a lot of that stuff that they're working on now that I don't have pictures of. But at the next time we have an information meeting, I've asked that they attend and we have updated designs. So the floor plans, the elevations. Then they're starting to calculate the actual cost. Now, in the $5.7 million, there's money in there for stuff like equipment, for the flooring. I mean, there's so many options for flooring. I mean, you could go with stuff like this, or you could go hard. The coaches were a lot meaner. They're more firm than that. But there's, the flooring is a big piece of it. There's so many options for flooring. So they have a certain amount of money. So if you have a budget of so much money that's in that, that's what I get. That's what I mean by going through and calculating that actual cost. Do you spend all your money? Do you spend a big chunk of it on the flooring? Do you use some of the equipment that you currently have, like volleyball nets and stuff, or do you buy all new equipment and stuff? So that's kind of what the actual cost would be, is trying to use the money that's already budgeted. The next piece is like for the community meetings. You would have community meetings like this, and then you look at, you get to see pictures of what it would look like having bleachers on both sides of the gym. Now I've seen it, and what it would mean is one of the ideas was that they'd have 3-4 rows on the far side, and then 7 or 8 on the right side or on the side that it's currently. The one issue is, one concern is that when you have the concourse, because the gymnasium will be lower than this gym, there's that drop off, and so if you don't have those bleachers going all the way up to the top, then you have to design stairs to get down to those bleachers. And one of the positives of having bleachers all on one side is, as many of you know, we have a very strong cheering team. If we were to have a competition, most parents and the cheerleaders only aim one way. So you're looking down, whether it's wrestling or anything like that, cheering especially, you'd have everybody on one set of bleachers looking over. Now again, and in the end, in these community meetings, you would have a straw poll on what you would like to have done, and they give you different options. Now, we also know that in this, people have asked about the size of the basketball court. We've actually gone with the larger size, which is what the MPA just approved for playoff games. So that's actually that design right there has the MPA approved size for playoffs. Or you could actually have like NBCs and stuff like that here in this gymnasium, because we would be one of the only schools that would have the larger court. So that's pieces that we would talk about the community meetings, looking at where we put the bathrooms, things. That's the schematic design phase that would be ongoing from now until June, and I'll talk a little bit about the other the timelines that are included with that. But there's still a lot of, my main point is that there's still a lot of discussions that need to occur with the community, with the staff, to make sure that what we're building is going to fit our needs. Now, with the gymnasium, that one we did go for a 20-year bond. And so in 2014, 2015, the actual increase in the increase in because of the bond would be $161,481. And then in 2015, 2016, the amount was $455,459. Now that's the amount that I shared at the last information meeting, was the $455,459. And that was, as you know, that's very close to about 1 mil. I think I calculated it to 0.99 mils. They're almost the same, so it's like $99 per 100. So again, if you add the two projects together, you're a little over 100 something dollars per $100,000 valuation. But again, these are the costs for the projects, and then when I get into the interest statement, you're going to see that number is going to drop significantly. And that's kind of my point this evening. One of the main points is that when you see that, it makes things look more feasible, I should say. I mentioned it already, but the bond interest impact is huge for this project because we currently only have 2 bonds. We went for one in 2004, now it's the LCS, and then we went for one in 2010, the Qualified School Construction Bond. That's what, when you hear QSCAB or QSCB, that's what that means, is a low interest bond. We went for that one in 2010. So those 2 bonds are currently on the books, and each year there's savings in interest of anywhere between $18,000 and $34,000. So that money, like I said, every year comes off the books. And I really haven't paid that much attention to it because we really didn't, until I was asked that question on home and thought about it, and I'm like, you know, I think I remember there's money that comes off. There's actually quite a bit that comes off this year. I think there's over $34,000. So anyway, each year you get that savings. Now, if you look at the handout, and this is where I'll try to do the best I can to explain this to you. Understand what I'm talking about. This is the spreadsheet. We try to make this, hopefully everybody has the color coded one so you can see the difference. Now on the far left is the gym. It's a 20-year bond, so you see that it goes from 2013-14 all the way to 2034-35. And it goes all the way down, and you'll see the principal, and then you see the interest each year. And if you notice, if you just look at the gym on itself, you'll notice that the interest for the gym drops every single year, with the exception of 2014-15. It starts 2015-16 is $170,459, and then it continues to drop. The track is next to that. That's a 10-year bond, principal, the interest, and then the total paid for each year. Now, the 2 bonds that we already have, one is LCS, and one is the high school qualified school construction bond. That's, again, the QSCD or the QSCAB is what they call it. And you'll notice the principal, the interest, and the totals for each one. Now, the line, if you look at the total budget amount, that's where I'm getting the $132,329,000. The total budgeted amount for this year is $1,152,000. That's currently what we're paying for our bonds. In 2014-15, when you add in both the gym and the track, the amount goes up to $1,132,273. So in yellow on the right-hand side, that is your actual budget increase. Those are the first 2 years that there's actually an increase to the local contribution and taxes. And that goes in 2014-15, again, it was $132,121. And then in 2015-2016, it goes to $329,763. And that's the budget increase. It's actually it's not $329,000 additional dollars. It's $329,000 total dollars, 763. And then each year you'll see that what I was talking about with the annual savings and interest. You see that the interest or the total budget starts to decrease starting in 2016-17. It goes down $31,809, and then to 32, 33, 35, and then 71,000. That's when the high school QSCAB or QSCB bond comes off the books. And then in 2025. I've joked that I want to be the superintendent here that year because $714,000 comes off the books. So That'll be a pretty good budget area. So if you look at the total budget amount, the easiest way to look at that, because the $31,809 is taken out, you'll see it goes from the total budget amount, you'll see where that decreased each year. One of the disadvantages, one of the things I thought I could do is take, for instance, in 2016-17, when $31,809 comes off the books, what I was hoping to be able to do would be to take that money and pay it towards one of the other bonds and try to pay them off early. The problem is that we don't have language in either one of the two bonds to do that. You can't pay, because we're part of a big bond bank, and the state issues this huge bond, they won't allow you to pay it off early. So once you're hooked into a bond, you're going to pay them that interest, you're going to pay them that principal, regardless. So there's no way to take that money and put it into the LCS or the LHS. Now, I don't know if it's possible. I know that we looked into, because there's no specific language in the high school one, bond, if we could have a pay early kind of language. And I don't know if it's possible to put that on the track or the gym. I don't know if you can ask for that or argue for that and have that language added to those two bonds, because if you did, then technically, as you can see quickly, you could add up and pay off one of those bonds early, which is how I would do financing. The other thing you could possibly do is use that money, obviously, to offset money that's in the budget, whether it's for vehicles or we have buses and lease purchases. That is one thing you can pay off early, is lease purchase, and you save money on interest. You could actually take that $31,000 the first year, put it towards your buses, your lease purchase on the buses, and save some money there. I was really hoping, originally I thought I could throw that money into those bonds, and what would happen is you would pay off a 20-year bond in 17 years. However, I've been told by our attorneys that unless you have the language, then you can't do that. Again, so there is savings, but the most impact on your taxes would be the second year, and that would be the $329,762, which is again, less than what I've been sharing over the last two information meetings. Now, this, like I said, this is easy for me to look at, but it may not be easy for some of you to look at. So when I'm done, if you have any questions about this, I'll do my best to answer them and try to re-explain that. But there's a lot of numbers on here, and so I made it in large print for those people that are going to be out here this evening. So you could look at this, and the goal is to show you that the amount decreases each year, and as a result, we're going to use that money to offset other pieces of our budget as much as possible. So here are the numbers again, as I shared before. The final local tax increase with both projects combined in 2014-15 is the $132,121, which is $29 for a $100,000 valuation. That's what it would be in 2014-2015. In 2015-2016, it would be $329,763, which is 0.72 mil, or $72 per 100,000. So that goes again from $100 or something down to $72 per 100,000, based on that decrease in interest. So that is your act. For those people that are wondering what this would cost, those are what your taxes would be. That's how it would impact your taxes. And that's based on the $500,000 and $5.7 million. Now, one of the things that I have received updates on is the actual construction timeline, because people have asked about how long it would take. There's certain things. For the track, a high estimate would be anywhere between 12 and 14 weeks. It will take 8 to 10 weeks to do all the excavation and the base work. It will take 1 to 2 weeks to do the track surfacing and the paving. So you're looking at a total project for the track would be around between 12 and 14 weeks, and that's on the high side. So if things worked out, we have good weather, it may be sooner. But those are the updated construction timelines. For the gymnasium, this would be ongoing for continuous for the next 14 and a half months. We're in the schematic design. That would be the next couple of months where we would be looking at the gymnasium. We would be, again, having informational meetings and doing straw polls for that. The design development is what they need to do for the months is another piece of that. We have to have all those pieces together. So there's 2 months of schematic design that we now until June. Design development is 1.5 months. Construction documents are 2 months. The bid phase is 1 month. And then the construction phase is 8 months. And that puts us right around June. And I know that I mentioned that one of the things is if we could, at the June referendum, we would potentially be able to have graduation in the June. Everything would really have to go. The architect said that it's doable, but everything has to go as planned. And if any of you been in construction or had something done, that doesn't not necessarily the case. So I know that I know that a lot of people were counting on and really thinking that this would be nice to have the graduation. But realistically, we probably need to have a few snow days, which I probably could arrange. We have to have several snow days in order to have my graduation. I don't know, parents shake their head no. That would be the construction phase. So things are really tight, but it's doable. Just again, a matter of making sure everything falls into place. The timeline for the referendum, we have our public hearing next Tuesday. You'll have a public hearing, we'll do our budget. We'll also have the town council will then be asked to vote on whether or not they're approving moving our bonds to referendum in June. And then, if approved, then on Friday the 9th, absentee ballots will be available to the public. And then on Tuesday, June 10th, that's when we have the bond referendum. And that's actually when we do our budget referendum validation vote. So we can combine that because it costs, I think, between $3,500 and $5,000 or something like that to hold a referendum in town. So that's one of the reasons why we piggyback on our existing referendum vote because it would save us on the tax and money. Oh, sorry. Heather, you missed that. Yeah, and one of the things about it, I apologize for missing that, but one of the things is that early last week, we'd asked to have a meeting earlier, and we'd asked the interim town manager if we'd have a meeting earlier. I didn't hear until last night. I was actually getting ready to go home and receive an email that they had potentially they wanted to change the time to 6:30. Now, we'd already created our flyers and mailed them out. So I'm hoping, I asked to keep the time at 7 p.m. because that's going to be telling everybody for the last 2 weeks. But if there's a change, we'll have to get the information out there. So I know there's a couple of councils here this evening, but I know I heard from the town manager or the interim town manager. He said he can get back to me as soon as he heard back from everyone. But as far as we know, that's what has been advertised, that's what we have on our signs. And I didn't hear until late last night, it was after 4:30 or so, when I heard that they were going to change it to 6:30. So again, that's still pending. Hopefully at 7 p.m. but at 6:30 we need to do the information. The clarifying questions that a lot of people have asked is, why the June referendum? I've already talked about it a little bit. The biggest piece is that we already have a budget validation vote for that particular day. And as a result, for anything, we've always had referendums throughout the year. The school department has had votes in January. They've had votes, 2 bonds that went out in April. We've had some in, we haven't had any in June. It's been January and then a couple in April. It basically comes down to when there's a need, the town and the school have gone out. The reason why we're asking to go to June is because we feel we're ready. We put a lot of time in this. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But again, that's just to save money, so we don't have to go for a separate referendum, just to save money. One of the other questions is, well, if you're asking for these 2 bonds, is there going to be another bond a year or 2 or 5 years down the road for a performing arts center? And that isn't our plan. What we've said, we've actually, originally when we first started these conversations, we would talk about all 3. that if you take these basketball nets and stuff down from this gymnasium and start using this for your visual performing arts, that you're probably going to receive grants. And even if we don't receive grants, a little bit of money can go a long ways to setting this up so that it's set up for audiences and different performances. And if it's used just for that, then we can build over time. Just like we've done with all the renovations to high school. I talked about we've had over almost $1.5, almost $2 million worth of work done in here. Whether it's $30,000 or it's $180,000, $30,000 and even $180,000 would go a long way to putting in some seating or the stadium type of seating here for our performing arts. So as long as I'm here, there wouldn't be any bonds. We wouldn't be asking for anything for the performing arts center. As a matter of fact, for as much work as I put into this, and a lot of people in the room put into this, I would prefer not to ever go for another bond again, because it's a lot of work. And if we can work with the money that we currently have, we've been fortunate. We made tough cuts over the years. With those that heard the history, I mean, when we had to lay off a lot of staff. We used the stimulus money to do the work in the building. We've been able to do a lot more money than we've had. We've never had to go to the community and ask for money for a bond or any type of work. We have gone to the community for our operational costs. The cost, if we do nothing, keep everything completely flat, it costs about $250,000 just in salaries and benefits alone for our operational costs. So we've never had to go out to the community. Not that I don't enjoy this, it's just a lot of work and a lot of anxiety, I should say. But quite honestly, I've worked here for 12 years, and I would bet that probably 10 of those years, I don't think this would have ever made it past the first meeting. And we've received in all the two prior meetings that we've had, of course, the first one, we did a mass mail to everybody in the community. We had maybe 15 people show up, 20 people up at the most. We received, out of those 15 or 16 people that responded, I think there were 3 or 4 people that said, no, don't go forward. The next informational meeting, we probably had 100 people here, maybe a little bit, a little bit less than what there is tonight. And out of those 100 or so people, the people that turned in the surveys, there were probably 60 to 70, only 5 said no. Now, like I said, I've been here for 12 years. They've been talking about a gym for all those 12 years. There are some of you who graduated from here longer than that, but they've been talking about a gym. And so this is the time. This is the time where I think it has support. And how much support, I'm not sure. But all we're asking is when we go to the town council next week, all we're asking is just to keep it on, have it go to referendum and have the voters vote. Because people have said, well, if you have it in June, you're not going to get the voter turnout that you do in November. But we've never did bonds on that, and there's no data. I mean, sure, you'll get more people because of the election. But again, if this town, I've been here, like I said, 12 years, if this is going to impact people's taxes, those people will vote. And I think if you get the word out there, we've done everything we possibly can to get the word out there to as many people as we can, so people are informed, so that when, if hopefully it goes to June, people would be able to show up and vote one way or the other. But at least it will give us an idea of where we stand and which projects are important. And that's one of the reasons why we have separate bond items for track and the gymnasium, because I know there are some people who support the gymnasium that may not support the track, and there are people who support the track that don't support the gymnasium, and there are people who don't support either one. So, and there are people who support both. So, it'll give us an idea of where we stand. So that's a big piece. The next one is, why can't we wait for state funding? Ironically, today the state released that they were going to do the next 6 projects on the list that was created in 2010. This earlier, it says LHS final priority list for the picture of the high school in front of the high school. And it shows that in 1999, 2000 was 51st. We were 51st on the list. 2001, 2002, we were 34. 2004, 2005, we were 27. And then in 2010, 2011, to the disappointment of myself and a lot of people part of those conversations, we were named at 27. So it can take They're just now getting some projects on the books. So if we wait for state money, we could be waiting a long time, because over the last 4 years, if schools that did not apply in 2010, if they open up the application again, those schools that didn't apply wouldn't be able to apply. And if they have a higher need than us, then we could remain at 27 or go even lower. So again, that's why we haven't made it. We were kind of in a really tough spot with our accreditation. We were either going to fix the stuff that we had or let it fall apart and potentially lose our accreditation. And so we chose to do what we could with the money that we had. And I think if you wait for the state, you'll be waiting. You could be potentially waiting quite a while. So that was one of the questions, and I know I answered that before. One of the things I wanted to point out this evening, because that's what people on the facilities committee had mentioned that they were in the past. So the biggest question is, try to answer this throughout this presentation, is why build now? And I know Tracy Austin, the chair of the school committee, when she spoke at the last information meeting, said, and many of you will agree, that there's really no good time when it comes to taxes. There's really no good time to spend money. The reason why I feel, and I believe that there's a lot of people in here who feel the same way, is why are we doing this now? Because one of the biggest pieces, as I mentioned before, we have with the budget validation referendum in June, we've already paid to have that vote completed. So we would save money by moving to a June referendum. It does, it's not that far away. It would be within the guidelines of the charter, and so that's one of the biggest pieces, that we already have the referendum scheduled, so we wouldn't have to spend any money there. The other piece is that we've been talking about this and planning this. We really thought we were going to be on the top of that list in 2010. So we spent extra money having if you remember, the new versus renovation analysis done, and that's when we determined that this building, even though older, is actually in better shape than a lot of the newer buildings. And so you could renovate this building. And so we've been building, you hear, we have like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, the high school renovations. That's where we came up with that, was through that planning from 2010. The other piece is that with the schematic design phase, moving forward with that, we are very close to being what they refer to as shovel-ready, which means if we were approved, we could literally have, get the money and start working on the project. And that's why, even though 14 and a half months seems like a long time, we're actually a lot closer. If this project wasn't as far along, then it'd be probably a year and a half, 2 years down the road. But it's really, we're really close to being shovel-ready, and we feel confident that we can have all this ready. The other piece is the project. Every year, as you know, the projects increase. So at 3%, both projects are going to increase every year another $180,000, and that's based on just 3%. I know that the project itself, since 2010, the cost has increased almost $750,000. So the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost. And so that's one of the reasons to consider moving forward with this. The other thing is that the school is in a really good spot. We're able to qualify for very low interest rates. And I know George and Roman Stephen, and those are going to change. As the economy gets better, more than likely interest rates could change or will change. If that's the case, then when you're talking $5.7 million, the difference in 1% interest is significant. And so the school actually qualifies for very low interest rates right now. And so that's another reason, is that the longer we wait, the chance that that interest rate could change, and then we throw all the numbers that I shared with you this evening off. But those are based on what we actually have in numbers. Another piece is the guaranteed performance contract. And one of the things we've done is we've been able to use existing money to do a lot of the work in this building. If we can finish, for instance, the HVAC, heat and ventilation, air quality or air controls in this wing right here, if we can finish that through a guaranteed performance contract, we can do a lot of this work through those guaranteed performance contracts, then that frees up some of the money that we've been using to do those projects. So we could actually put some of that money towards this and try to help offset the cost. So that's why I'm saying that's a big piece of this project, is the guaranteed performance contract to help us offset some of these costs. And Another piece that I shared with the town council and the school committee is that about 2 weeks ago, we were approached by RSU 5. They have a withdrawal working group. They're trying to, Powell and Durham are researching what it would look like to pull out or withdraw from RSU 5. They have about 200 students. When we were interviewed, we were literally interviewed as an option for those particular students. One of the things that they did talk about was our accreditation. And that puts us at a disadvantage. Now, they're going to be making a decision in June. We have had Durham students, there's 160 of those 200 kids are from Durham. We have historically always had Durham students until they created the RSU 5. We may have some right now, but that's, unless there's a change, those students would no longer be attending here. But at about $8,600, almost $9,000 per year per student, it wouldn't take a whole lot of students to help offset the cost of some of these projects. And again, I can't sit here and say that we even have one, but I'm pretty sure if the kids were good. I know that maybe not the committee we talked to, but I know when there was another group that was investigating this 2 years ago, they wanted school choice for their kids, which means they wanted to have the option to send them to talks in London, 3, 4, or whatever, or Lisbon. And we may not get any of those kids, but we're not really, one of the things that they really focused on was the fact that we are on probation. Even though we're fully accredited, we are on probation. But we shared with them all this work. They're very interested in making a decision in June. It would really be in our best interest to have this in place. In case that was an option, we were able to get some of the students to attend these schools. The last piece is, and I've only mentioned accreditation a few times, and that's not why I wanted, when we've had all these conversations, one of the pieces, one of the main points I've said is that even if we do this work, it doesn't mean that we would be taken off probation. I would find it very unlikely that we wouldn't, but it's not a guarantee. And so I've never used that as an argument. What I've said is this is an investment. And I know that through the last several months, especially since the beginning of the school year when these conversations first started, a lot of people in this community have sat down and said, you know what, it's time. We've been talking about it. There's, like I said, there's people that are sitting there that graduated 25, 30, 40 years ago, even longer. And it's time. This is an investment for the community. You can put money in this. We're going to be competing against other schools for students with all the charter schools and stuff. We'll be competing with those schools as they continue to be created. We're going to be competing with our other schools. This is a huge investment. There's very few communities that have put the amount of resources into their schools or into their infrastructure as you have, whether you know that or not. I can assure you that the schools that may be ahead of us in the school construction going, they've done little to nothing. They've focused on letting things kind of fall apart, hoping that there's going to be money. But again, a lot of them are still several schools away from being ready to receive any type of state funding. So again, the biggest piece to this is you investing in your schools, but more importantly, your community. Because I know when we changed the front of the building, if you look at the 2 pictures of the high school, what it used to be like and what it is now, it's actually hard because it's been several years since we did all that work. But it's almost when you look at that, it kind of brings you back to what the front of the building actually looked like. So again, these proposals are asking you as taxpayers here in Lisbon and Lisbon Falls to invest in your community, and that's what we're asking for this night. And that's what we're asking for basically for next week for the members of the town council. Is all we're asking is to have this move forward and let the citizens of Lisbon Falls vote on this in June, because we feel that we are ready. And it may or may not, I can't say or tell you what it will end up being, because this is a small sample of how many people would vote. But I would disagree with anyone that would say that people will not go out and vote because it's in June. I think that this is, there's enough work that's been spread through this community over the last several months that people will be out and will vote one way or the other. So, with that, again, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here this evening, and I would like to open it up to questions from members of the community. Anything that I mentioned or missed, or especially the spreadsheet on the numbers on the bond. So if anybody has any questions, we're going to try that microphone. It may not work, and we have to take this one because when we we tested that one earlier. There's a lot of feedback. So, anybody would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Eric Medina. I do have a question as far as the tax increase you talked about, mill rates. Is it possible that you could give us an example of what a tax increase, say if you had a house that's valued at $100,000, how much would the tax go up on that piece of property?
Yep. For both projects, it would be $72 per 100,000 for both projects. So whatever you're paying now would be an additional $72 per 100,000. You said $100,000 home.
Right.
So your taxes would go up $72.
Okay, that's...
And that's in 2015, 2016. Next year, it would actually be $29.
Right, so what is that for the second year? The second year was going to be a higher tax increase, correct?
Correct, right here. Yep. First year is 0.29 mils, and the second year would be 0.72 mils for these projects.
Okay, so thank you.
Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely. The gym is actually, if you look at the diagrams, the gymnasium would be out here. So the concourse in between the two buildings, I can show you one of those diagrams, but there's going to be, I think, 20-something feet in between the two buildings because of code. You have to have enough room for bathrooms. So there's I believe it has to be 20-something feet. So there's 20-something feet this way, and it would be out towards here, and then we would redo, with the practice field just for the football team, that would become a parking area. That's one of the reasons we created the practice area down by the track, so that football or other teams could practice down in that particular area. So this is where the gymnasium would be.
If the practice football field is going to become parking for the new gymnasium, does that mean is the tarring of the practice football field incorporated in the?
Yep. Well, that's a big chunk. The question was, would the tarring for the rerouting of traffic and all the parking be included? Yes, that's all part of the groundwork. That's why the groundwork was a big chunk of the. I think the gymnasium itself is actually 3.7 million. But it's all the groundwork that has to be done. There's quite a bit of groundwork out here, and then there's a big chunk of it that's underneath, redoing all the space, relocating, and putting up walls and stuff underneath. And that's, as we move forward, you'll be able to see it. Right now we only have the top pictures and stuff, but once they start doing the schematics piece, then you'll see where the locker rooms are and how it's set up. The actual pictures of the bleachers on this side looking down, there's actually going to be a center aisle so that people can access the gym through the doors from these areas here. So there's again, these were things that were put together in 2010. Sorry.
Someone I was just curious, is that going to affect or eliminate student parking though?
No, the actual design from with the engineer or the architect, and what happens is the angled parking out back here, it actually is about the same. It just means that some things are one way, and so what happens is if you angle it though, you can put in more spots, you just have to paint it, and then people have to get used to knowing that when they come in, they're going to have to go to the right, and then the buses can pull in, there's different spots. Again, we've seen it, but we just saw it on Monday, but we've seen what the design would look like. You can almost see it in one of the new pictures, how when you, you can see it on this one too. Yeah, over on the, this is better.
This will be one way.
gymnasium was outstanding. I had a couple questions on the financial evaluation. What was the interest rate that would be applied to the 10-year track loan and the 20-year gym loan? I didn't see the interest rate. You know, are you going to estimate it because it's going to be a package that the state loans will get?
I know if we use the QSCB bond money, it's 1%. That's what it's going for right now. So if we can incorporate any of that into the project, we're one of the few schools in the state that were approved. We have $900,000 to do the up to work our projects here for the guaranteed performance contract. I want to say it was 3%. Kathy's here, but I'm not sure. She's pulling up the numbers right now.
It varies between 0.7% up to 4.3%.
Okay, the answer was it varies between 0.7% and 4.3%? And 4.3% for... It must be variable.
That's a big variation. Wow. If you look at your LCS bond, the year 2013, 2014, 305,000 was interest paying along.
Mm-hmm.
That's a correction. All right, but I did have one more question. Now, I went on the internet to look at our academic requirement, because in my opinion, a 12-year publicly funded education paid for by the taxpayers for students should result in achievement. Their athletic achievements are to be commended, no doubt about it. But we are, as taxpayers, wanting our students to get out there and compete in an intellectual fashion. So when I looked at the MHSA test for 2013, we didn't make it. We didn't make the state average, the minimum average, we didn't make it. And so I would request that these projects for potentially going to a private fundraising situation with matching funds in the 5-year plan that would have financial impact statements attached to it so that the taxpayers know that through private fundraising we'll achieve athletic requirements, but academic requirements are the priority.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we didn't make it. I mean, we rate for the 4 subject areas we haven't enough.
And that's the equivalent, that's the SAT, those are the abbreviations for the
Well, there was
SATs, correct?
there was a test that was administered
I'm not sure.
April 4th, but the results probably aren't back yet. The science test for the new year, for the 11th grade, I couldn't find the new results, but from last year, from 2013, for the 11th grade, the four tests that were administered, we didn't make it for the 11th grades. So, anyway, I also did a really rough calculation of my own, because we have a common core we have to come up with, basically $1 million. The industry, that's across the state, and I understand that every taxpayer, 150-some schools that have to come up with the money to implement Common Core, we have those taxes raising on us. The public works fire we just recently had with the snow truck and building repair is going to cost probably $1.1 million according to next week's public meeting. Our public roads are in horrible repair, that the damage to school buses for tires and alignments and things, that's going to probably be at least another $1 million or so. So I roughly did a $5.1 million in addition to your 2014 school budget of $18 million. And that comes up to $30 million we have to come up with. And our academics are our priority, but the gymnasium and the track is. And I have issues with that. I do have issues with that. Being insane, because if I don't act quickly, there's going to be increases to the cost of the gymnasium and track because you're competing with private schools and school choice. I apologize if I'm going to go slow with you because I want the students to get an academic excellent education, not graduate with Fs. No, so I prefer going a little bit slower and be more thoughtful about things. So, anyways, I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Can I answer those?
Yes, please.
The first one is when you look at student achievement over the last several years, when you look at the achievement of each one of our classes, student achievement has increased. Overall, as a state, last year, if you read the papers, overall, as a state, scores dropped. And that's one of the biggest concerns from Governor LePage and the Department of Education. As far as the Common Core, there is, outside of our professional development money that's already part of federal money, your taxes probably on the federal side would be impacted by the Common Core, but the Department of Education has money in there as well to help schools transition to the Common Core. So you've already, those taxes are probably already included or are included in our budget. As far as the academic, I mean, one of the reasons why we did the strategic educational plan and the informational meeting the first night is because we focused on our facilities, we focused on a lot of things, but one of the pieces that we didn't have any documentation on is the amount of work that we've done academically. So I can assure you that if you look at the other scores, and I'm not exactly sure if you're pulling these numbers from the DOE.
Yes,
There-
and there's another site as well that has the entire main schools, like 152 schools.
Right, we've had this conversation before. One thing to remember about the Department of Education numbers is that they're 2 years old.
This is
You have to-
2013.
But you have to make sure that that's where they're coming from. But if you compare, one of the things on our district flyer when we hand it out is we actually put our school grade will be coming out in another month. When you compare where we are, the reason why I put that on there is because if you compare, we're not where we want to be, and we're obviously not where you want us to be, but we're actually better. We're actually better than a lot of the systems around it. And you can compare, one of the things that it may not be as easy to get their numbers, but we do put we're trying to be as transparent as we possibly can about that. As far as the pressure on doing it now or whatever, those are just reasons, those are reasons why we would want to move forward. I don't believe the 30, I have to respectfully disagree that I don't believe the $30 million total increase for the taxpayers is accurate.
Okay, again, it's just a rough thing.
Right.
It's basically the Common Core, Siemens, Public Works, Fire, see, the problem
Siemens is
I
the cost.
understand the school has a very isolated sector that they look at, but me as a taxpayer, I look at all the obligations that the Public Works, Fire is part of my tax
Yeah, I'm
bill.
going to answer that one.
Public roads is part of my tax bill.
Yep.
So if you include the 2014 school budget of $18 million, doesn't include the municipal budget next door of probably another $6 million. So actually, my numbers may actually be low on what we're going to be assessed for. And plus, with the actual reassessment coming up, that it is probably going to increase. Like my taxes personally went up. I'm sure everyone's hearing that room went up, but I have no problem paying taxes. I will pay taxes as long as I know the students that graduate from this school have an excellent education. And I don't know where they're going to get jobs running track. I don't know where they're going to get jobs playing basketball. But I do know they'll get jobs in a competitive fashion. They can read, write, math, science, and English. I know that. But they probably, I don't know, a little bit sketchy on their ability to run a track.
One of the other...
Yes, I agree. My numbers are, and just as your spreadsheet is potentially these are the costs, but I'm very concerned if we're going to pay $30 million for an F grade. I don't care accreditation or probation. We are on probation academically. Whether our buildings are falling around us, our academics are on probation. That's all.
No, not for me, it's the facilities. We're not on probation for our academics. We're on probation because of our facilities. There's nothing we can do about the gymnasium, so that is...
Even the accreditation and the probation part, if a child, like my son graduated out of this high school, he was immediately accepted at USM, no problem. And he graduated out of here with C average. No problem. They didn't ask about his transcripts. They didn't care about his probationary periods or the accreditation of the school. They didn't. As long as that child is willing to pay the bill, they'll accept it. They'll matriculate him. So that's kind of a red area to say probation or accreditation.
Right, that's why I've never brought NEAS into the picture, because, again, it's a facilities piece that we have, that's kind of out of our control. There's not much we can do here. To go on about the town garage, the roads and things like that, although I don't have any direct involvement with that, I can tell you that the interim town manager and I met on a couple of occasions already. We probably spent 2 or 3 hours. We've already been able to look at consolidating a number of resources that would help make a proposal such as a town garage much better for the citizens. If you could use existing money, if you could consolidate enough resources to make a proposal to the community that you need, this would cover the one, because a $1.1 million bond is going to be around $100,000 a year on your neglecting the infrastructure, then people won't, you know, I know that the interim town manager said the roads are bad, and people come in here to build businesses, they won't build their business. I don't control that piece, but I'm more than willing to work with the town council, with the town manager. We have done more in the last 3 weeks than I have in the last 5 years.
Yeah, no, sorry. I have no problem investing in the school, I have no problem investing in infrastructure, but I'd rather invest the money wisely in academics, not athletics. But that's just me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Green, my name is Richard Nettle, Richard's on the school board. Well, this track is probably my fault, because when I was back here, they were talking about building a new high school, okay? And I didn't see building the track here and then turning around and building another one at the new school. So I was very adamant against this track, new track, the one to build, until they built, if they were going to build the school or not. I don't know why it lasted this long. I'd like to make one comment, and then I got some questions. Now, I don't know why the state is not obeying the law that the people pass in the schools. They're supposed to pay 55%, but ever since the people passed that referendum, the state legislature has never given it 55%. We used to get 69% over here in school when I was on the board. And people voted for these 55%. They've never given it to us, and every year it seems to go down. Now, either they stop playing politics or get out. Schools need to be supported, not only by the towns, but the legislature. They got a long one to look, the break. Now, my question is, on this track, they want to build a whole other track. Now, what is the drainage on that, for one thing? The other thing is what is going to be put underneath this stuff? Are we going to put, I've heard slate with something else, because that's kind of mushy. Even though it dries really quick, it's kind of mushy underneath there. It's going to be all gravel, and what kind of, like I said, ask, what kind of a drainage system, and is this also in the bond?
Your first question I couldn't hear, was that the grade of the track? Did you say grade?
No, the drainage.
Oh, drainage, okay. Yes, one of the things, what we've been told, the reason why the track, the groundwork is so expensive is because when the track was built, I believe by civil engineers, however many years ago, they just used regular gravel and fill. So they literally have to go in and dig that out 18 inches. They need to add drainage. It's all included, but they need to add drainage because the track is angled, so any rain or whatever is going to push it all into the football area or the runways and stuff like that. So there is drainage, there is the groundwork, and that is probably almost $180,000 to $200,000 of the project. It's almost, I guess, close to 50% of the project. And as far as what type of fill, I don't know, but I know that that's what they do for a living. And so whatever they're going to put in there would be what's going to work for the track. So I don't know exactly what type of fill it is, but I know that they have to change it up to bring in better fill, and then it has to be all packed and stuff and done that way. But I can get those specifics. Ryan, who's the person, wasn't able to be here this evening, but as we move forward, after next Tuesday, in fact, it's added or going to referendum, we could bring him in for some of those informational links, and he can give you the specifics.
I have to add one thing.
Sure.
This thing goes to be bonded, from what I understand for the town, because they want that salt shed and new garage, they're going to deny the bond.
So up on the 15th,
15, okay, I stand corrected.
saying show up here on the 15th and tell them you want to be able to vote. At LCS.
Yeah, the public hearing is at LCS on the 15th. Yep. George left. Is there anybody?
Sorry, I beat you.
it's foreign to me. This was very nice, I understood this, so I appreciate that. Second thing I wanted to add was that I wish all the bond proposals were presented the way you presented it tonight. And I may have misunderstood. I thought that the bond for the public works was going to be presented tonight as well, or is that another night?
I don't know, I think it's going to be presented on Tuesday. I don't have much information outside of the costs, and I have had conversations, I have a meeting with the interim town manager, but it's actually after the public hearing to talk about some conversations we had about when we were talking about relocating or building a new central office. There are a couple councilors here. I don't know if I know there's not going to be. There's no informational meeting between now and Tuesday, is there? Yeah.
I hope, and I would ask them to present it in such a fashion. It's very difficult for me, and I'm sure a lot of people to go and dig into all of these numbers. So if the town side could present it in such a fashion as well, as far as how many bonds are up or that we're paying for currently, and when those would be paid off, that would be very, very helpful. Then I would have a better understanding as far as what I'm looking at. And I'm sure there's been discussions about combining town and school services that are overlapping. And where are we at as far as that goes? Is that something that's being done so that we're hoping that we can use once again some of that money towards this project?
I don't have the specifics, but I know that publicly, many of you probably have heard that we talked about payroll services. We actually do. We have our custodians do the cleaning at the town office, so we've been doing that for a number of years. But the one piece that we're looking at, and I'll have a proposal to the school committee once we have firmer numbers, would be that we would combine our payroll services because we just had a resignation. And so we now have an opening, so instead of laying somebody off, we can actually use the person that we have. And then so we will provide payroll services, but I don't have it now. I was, as I mentioned before, those types of conversations, they've only spent a few hours, but we made a lot of agreements on what we could do. What I'm hoping for is to be able to work again with the interim town manager and the town council to look at using existing money, because I believe that if you don't have these meetings or stuff, and you don't have the information for the community, doesn't matter how much money there is, those people will vote it down. And if we can come in here and show a town garage with existing money, I mean, it's kind of like the front of the building. I remember having a parent come up and say, so you're telling me that this isn't going to cost us any money, you're going to use the $20,000 that you're leasing those portables for each year, and you're going to take another $15,000 from another bond that's expiring, and you're going to add them together, you're going to be able to do $50,000 worth of work? Yes. And so that would pass pretty easy. And that's what we hope to do. But again, we have a meeting on Monday, and then we'll continue moving forward with that.
Yeah, because once again, as I indicated in my last meeting, that was my big concern, is that bonds may potentially be paid off, but then I don't know where that money is going to. I know that there's a cost to maintaining whatever it is that you built or added, but I would imagine that the whole bond shouldn't be just held on to it. I don't know if I'm making sense. It's nice to know where that expired bond money is going, so I really appreciate that.
I have seen the list. I know we have 2 bonds, and I know they have 1 or 2. They have, do you know, Chris, do you know how many? So I know they have 1 or 2.
Yeah. And so the last thing I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that if we can't put the bonds that are expiring, we can't put that money towards paying off the other bonds. At what point do the taxpayers, I guess, finally see that money coming back to them as far as the mill rate decreasing? Because a bond has been paid off, and it feels like the taxes never, ever go down. So at what point do we really see that action take place?
You will actually, one of the things that I haven't mentioned is, I'm sure Tracy is going to remind me, is the fact that our budget that we're proposing, because of the increase in revenue from the state, the school department is going to have, your taxes will go down by over $200,000, which is almost $500,000 because of that additional revenue. And that was actually supposed to be a piece that we were adding in here. Why would we do this now? It's because we're getting additional money from the state. So even at $137,000 increase because of both projects, because of all the money, additional revenue that we're receiving, it would still be a tax savings to you. So our operating costs are $250, and we've been right around there. And last year we added about $90,000 in new money for curriculum, materials, and supports, professional services, things like that. But this year, your taxes, you're actually it'll be a reduction up to 200-some-thousand in states.
Because of the school end, is that what you said?
Because we received over 500,000 in additional revenue this year. And that doesn't count our anticipated revenue and things like that. So that's all stuff that's going to be presented on Tuesday. But again, it should have been part of this presentation, why it's a good time to do it now. Because if you just look at what you paid for taxes for the school last year, you could actually pay less and have both of these projects added to that.
Okay, because I know when it comes to my own budget, when I pay something on, it feels great. So I want to know when the town pays something off and that, like I said, that bond money comes back to the taxpayers. Or if they want to use it, that they actually are explicitly telling us where it's going. Honesty goes a long way. Thank you.
Well, for us, I know like that $32,000 the first year, I would probably say that's going to move towards paying off like one of our bus leases. That's how I do it.
Chuck Caselli, Lisbon resident here. The track's been long overdue, but we all know. And I think that's going to be the quickest, easiest fix, cheapest fix, obviously, for most of us here. I think it's underestimated how much the community would use that track. I think if you go to Bowdoin College, Bates College, Lisbon High School, Scarborough High School, you see how much the community uses the whole thing as a whole right off the bat. I think that would be the cheapest thing for us to get done, or the quickest thing to get done. I'm not against the gymnasium. Absolutely, I think these kids work hard as far as basketball goes and everything to do everything. They work really hard to achieve what they have done. But I think they really need a new track. I don't know what you have planned for the football fields. You got practice field, you got more events coming in, you have a whole lot of, more stuff coming for all that stuff. I think you have to really focus on the track and, that's what I say. Thanks.
Thank you. That's why I said there's people here earlier. There's people who support one, support the other, support both.
And I know Mr. Bomber, everybody who's always been here for the basketball team. So really, this is a whole community thing.
Yep. One thing that we do have, how we've been able to create the practice areas and increase the field hockey, part of the soccer fields and stuff, is that we have $30,000 in our budget for that type of work. So instead of going out and asking for money, we would utilize that money to help offset the fencing and stuff like that down in that area. So they would have, we're hoping to be able to put the loan and seed down on the practice for us, and that's how they finish their event down there. But there's a pretty big practice area where you could do multiple events, multiple practices, and we created the area behind the middle school so they can use
I know if you want to do that track down there with a multi-year service, definitely talk with Mr. Hall and figure out what you guys need to do to get all your stuff situated. I remember the last time I was here, I missed the last meeting. I was here at the first one where they said, well, certain lanes are for certain people to walk and do things. I remember you said, I'm not going to put a sign saying that people can't walk on these lanes just because. Well, if you go to these tracks, you see everything. The community really respects everything that these people want for these tracks. If they, respect what you want.
Yeah, that's what we were actually told that again last night. We had the center lanes because of the wear and tear. They just put up signs and most people respect that. And the trail is being built, it actually comes out right towards the end of the track area. So I agree with a lot of community members would use that.
500 miles of trails will be crazy. I'll go against a couple of people. I firmly believe in athletics. I was an athlete at this high school 50 years ago. I'll give away my age. I'm 66. I understand the track's very old. Okay. Well, why are we spending, in the end, almost $8 million on a building that I really see no functional purpose? What good does a new gym really do us? What, other than we have a nice pretty gym? I mean, hosting conferences is a losing proposition. You don't make money. You don't do anything. So what's the purpose?
If you don't mind if I can speak to that. Part of the reasoning for this is also that if you have another facility, we are losing out on revenue. We had playoff games that we had to go to a different school to do. Most of the time, schools will charge for that usage. We happen to have an inn in that area, so that did not happen this time. But what a new gymnasium will do, that, in my opinion, I haven't seen yet in quite a while, is it generates excitement. We would be able to host tournaments, MVCs, regionals for a gymnasium that size, whether it be cheering or basketball for boys and girls. All of that brings in money into the local town. Brings in business, gas, drinks, eating. We don't have lodging, so I can't count that, but maybe we would someday. To me, this is an economic project as much as a school project. We pay fees to go to tournaments. Our teams would be able to play. That would not be an expense that we would need to pay, and we would have other organizations paying us as revenue streams to help with that type of item. The other thing is, renting. I mean, those performing arts, let's say everything went through, and you had a performing arts center, there would be business conferences that could rent this. I look at it as, and I've said this in several meetings over the past few months, I'm looking at this as a revenue stream as much as I am for the students and the town. It would bring in money, and it would bring in traffic. Something that we are a pass-through town between Lisbon, Auburn, and Towson, New Brunswick, and it would be an item that would get people to stay, to stop, to spend, and to enjoy as a community as much as having out-of-towners here.
Okay, but what Lewiston and Auburn has, and what Thompson has, and Brunswick has, it's going to take a hell of a good deal to get somebody to play and stop here.
Well, part of
we don't have that many restaurants in the town that are really quality restaurants. Great places to eat, but quality restaurants don't exist.
And I agree that our infrastructure of business is on the low side. I absolutely agree with that. But in order to generate the need, right now we don't have a need. To generate the need, we need traffic. We need people to stop and stay and buy houses and raise their families and start new businesses within the community that we live in. Right now, that's not happening. So for me, from the economic side, this for me is our opportunity. That's how I view it.
I just don't see it that way. You want $75 a year out of me for something that I don't see the economic side to it. Because the town also wants another plate out of me. $25 here, $25 there. I am retired, I'm disabled, I can't work. My income is it's what it is. I have to live on it. So if I give you $75 a year, I have to take that $75 from someplace else.
Do you mind if I cut devil's advocate for just 1 minute?
Go right ahead, because that's what I'm doing.
So we don't do anything to improve the school, the community in a project like this. And families start moving. We have more vacant houses than normal. We start having a lot more, even more foreclosures, and we just have people putting their houses up for sale. That tax revenue, in turn, comes around the other side as well with increases. And that, for me, is what I'm trying to stop. Trying to stop that wanting to flee. I want to stay, and I mean, that obviously is my job as a school committee member, but I'm also a longtime resident of this town and care about it.
I am too. I grew up in this town. Other than a few years away with military, I lived here.
And you came back for a reason.
And I moved here by choice.
Yeah.
I didn't come here because Lisbon High School is the greatest place on earth to get an education. It's okay. It does a pretty good job, as many other towns do. I came back here because I like this area. It's in the middle of everything. It's 35 miles to almost anything I want to do. That's why I'm here.
And that's, I think, why a lot of people in town is because we choose to be here.
Right here, because this is the center. Thank you.
Dean Willie, Lisbon Falls. I just had a comment in response to Mrs. Perry, from Mrs. Perry, about academics and athletics. I think they go hand in hand. Academics are very important, but without athletics, a lot of the kids in town, or in my experience, I wouldn't be where I am without athletics. I was the type of kid where if I didn't have athletics, I wouldn't even have gone to school. I would have graduated. I wouldn't be where I am. So yes, academics are very important, but athletics are very important also to keep the kids and have them have something to come to school for, because they all know if they don't come to school and they don't perform in school, and that's another thing that athletics does, it instills in the kids that they have something to work for when they come to school, and what they're working for is to be able to play. What they get out of it also is the academic side of it. They get educated, but because they want to play sports so much, they come to the academics. And that's all I have to say about the academics and athletics.
It's coming on 7 o'clock. I know we scheduled that, so I don't know how many other people have questions. Okay.
I asked Mr. Healy to go downstairs. I've attended the scholarship night here in Lisbon for quite a few years, and he has I asked him to go get 2 different researches, statements from that night. Last year's graduating class was a small amount of kids that had come through here, but on scholarship night, they raised from colleges their packages that these children get, $729,454. Local scholarships were $42,550, bringing that graduating class of 2013 to $772,004 as their total. And in 2012, their grand total was $2,228,992. Colleges don't give that money away to kids that are not educated. So I just wanted to make sure that that was known. Our students coming out of here are getting some serious money from colleges who want them. All right, we do have a student, I'm going to cat in the bag as the mother said I can, who close to a full ride to Georgetown.
Any other questions? And again, if you don't feel comfortable standing up here, feel free to contact me. My information is on the flyer that was tried to receive earlier this evening.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Houston. I have been a lifelong member of this community. I graduated from this high school in 1989, and I am very happy to say that I'm not a complete failure because I went to school here. I'm actually very successful in this community. I chose to come back and live here. Both of my children do attend school here. I have a freshman that I'm praying will be able to graduate in school, and I'm hoping that maybe that he will be able to graduate in our home gym. That's what I'm hoping for. Everything is cyclic. You invest money in your kids, you invest money in your schools, you invest money in your community. It all comes back around. I have a feeling that I'm the chair of a lot of fundraising committees. We fundraise a lot in this town. And a lot of the fundraising that goes on promotes prom, which we would be able to hold in our own town. We wouldn't have to rent a facility out of town. Project graduation, we may look into bringing something here for the kids to do here instead of having to go out of town. You catch my comment being here? Graduation out of town. All these things have to be funded by the class, has to raise lots and lots of money to fund these things to go out of town. Wouldn't it be wonderful for us to be able to offer this in our town? Thank you.
I just had a quick question on the paperwork that was passed out.
Yep.
It shows a $100 per $100,000 valuation, but at the end of your presentation, you show that it's probably 340 and only like 72. So I'm wondering, is that savings coming back from bonds that are being paid off?
Correct. There's two things. One thing I didn't explain is that in the handouts, you'll see that what 1 mil is. 1 mil is $460,000. So that means that $100 per $100,000 valuations. That's what 1 mil equals. So the other piece is, one of the things that was mentioned is that when you look at the actual cost of the two projects, when you add them together, it was what, 0.99 mil or $99, and then 15 or whatever. And then one of the ways I was told to explain it, it's like when you buy a new vehicle, you pay there's the full price, which is what you actually pay, but think of it with the interest coming off, think of that as a trade-in. And so when you buy a new vehicle, you actually have that money as a trade-in. I don't know if that works for anyone, but I was told to explain it that way. But that, the actual expense is $72 per, I believe $72 per 100,000.
Just what my worry is, I mean, I just moved here, I have four boys in the start of the school year. Next year, I'm all for, the process of, keeping the school going and spending money on it or whatever. What I worry is that the money's there that are said to be potential savings get absorbed someplace else. Like in some other portion of the budget for the town or something, and then it's not a $72 increase, it's the $100 that was talked about, and then it's still the other $30 that was talked about for the track. It winds up being the full amount, even though there was, savings discussed. And one other thing I had was the track to be a tar track, or is that supposed to be the rubber style track?
It's tar and then the rubberized coat and put on the top. It's all weather, or I think it's all weather track.
I just bring that up just for the simple fact that I went to Lisbon High School when I was growing up, and the track there is that the ground rubber track, recycled tires.
Correct.
They grind the tires up.
That's what it is.
That track's been there for a long time, and it's in good shape. I just wonder if tar might be something that over time is going to erode, even though it's got a rubberized coating.
Well, they have, that's why they need to do the groundwork on it, so we don't have issues. They have to let the tar set for 2 weeks, and then they recoat it. I think they usually have a maintenance plan, and you say like every 10 years or so you have to do maintenance on the tracks, but it's the same type of track, it's all weather track. And as far as the taxes go, I know you just moved here, but one of the things that I would explain, if this does pass, I would be sure to tell the community where that $32,000 is going each year, because I would try, again, I would probably, we need to really look at our buses. We have some buses that are from actually the 80s, late 80s. I would say that $32,000 is going to pay the lease payment for this vehicle, and the school committee will confirm that, and probably members of the committee know that we're pretty transparent, or try to be as transparent as possible when we do our budgets. So I would let you know where that money is. In the past, it's just been taken off, and that's why we try to keep below the $250,000, just because the interest has come off the books, or there's other savings.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, like I said, in the paperwork it says 100, but then at the end it's
Right, I think I was in that one. I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about, but that was how I was trying to explain what 1 mil is equivalent to. It's $460,000 or $100 per $100,000 valuation. A lot of information, but again, feel free to
No, go ahead, finish.
No, I was just saying, please feel free to contact me, because it is a lot of information. And again, we'll have our public hearing next Tuesday at LCS.
Norman Albert, Golden Falls, and I'm going to borrow, there's no such thing as a good line, and Tracy had a great line 2 weeks ago at the town council hearing, and there's never a good time for anything like this. So if I say to you all, if not now, when? We've been waiting a long time, and it didn't benefit any one of us, and it won't benefit most of us. We're not in the school. It will benefit our community. It'll benefit some of our families. We'll get to see some of our townsfolk, have them watch what they're going to see with their children coming through into the school system. More important, new facilities. More importantly, I disagree with some of the folks who have said that, you know, we have a pretty genuine look at it. No, it'll bring revenue. It'll show people that come here when they come for an NBC event or for some other event where they're coming from a far region outside of where they normally would travel down the road. They realize that this community built this on their own, and they're not afraid to get their hands dirty, roll up their sleeves, and do stuff. And maybe this is where I want to put my business. Maybe start small, maybe do something different. So we can't be short-sighted here. We have to look at this and say, what are we doing? Are we just spending money and we're going to be taxing? I realize this is a tough prospect for somebody who's on fixed income. And it's difficult. Any increase is difficult to bear, especially in this time. So I know you can't take that lightly, and I can appreciate the other side of this. I would just say, think it through. I'm glad to see a lot of faces at these informational meetings. It means a lot. It means that we care about our community, even if we don't agree. So that's all I have to say. And I want to thank you all for all the effort that you put into getting this ready and getting it to be ready to go. Thank you.
Sorry to be back, but I remember the rest of the stuff stage right earlier. Grades. Somebody mentioned on it earlier. They have kids in grades. What keeps these kids going sometimes in school is track. Mr. Hall has bet on these kids from day one. You want to participate. What are you doing? How are these kids raised? Mr. Hall's not the only one. All the teachers. Ms. Bennett. All these teachers are all these kids to keep their grades up, to keep their academics up, to keep passing, to keep going, to keep striving better. And if they don't strive better in school, they strive better on the field. And that's what a lot of these people don't realize, I think, sometimes, with all these fields and all these athletes. Really need a little, sometimes, to get them going. Coach Woodhead, same thing, all the time. And as far as money, when I go to a school and I see a track meet, a state meet, NBCs, nationals, New England, you see buses coming from all over. That is money for a community that people don't even realize. That people in this community have never seen. If you've never been to a huge event, well, then you go to a big event sometimes. You go, you figure out, you open up your paper and see where this event's going to be. And you see all these buses stroll in from everywhere. And you are going to see more money coming into that community that you won't even believe. And this town has never seen that. Lewiston has. Augusta has. Just go to one of them, and you will not believe what happens. And I can say you guys have put on a huge thing, all right? But when I come here and I look at this whole thing right here, what do I see? Dust. Look at that curtain. I'm just saying, you look at that. I am here looking at this, and we're talking about new. And we are looking, we can't even do this for our community right here, right now. And you want new gymnasium? And we've done the paint, we've done the lights, but we can't clean our curtains. That's just, I'm not all right. Thanks, though.
That wasn't staged either. We were just told by the drama coach that if we start messing with those or take them down, they're probably going to incinerate. We looked at the replacement.
Just real quick, I'll finish up. On a couple of occasions, it's two individuals that have basically attacked my comments, criticism regarding academic achievements. It is not me that makes these numbers up. The main HSA, which you can get off main.gov.ed, have these scores for the Lisbon High School. I'm not making them up. I love my school. My son graduated from it. 2 of my sons graduated from the school. 2. So I want success. As Ms. Austin said, we received $2 million in scholarships. What if we had been in an A, B, C class? We would probably been in the $20 million category for scholarships. We didn't reach up and grab that extra apple. That's all I'm saying. I didn't make this up. None of this did I make up. It's all on the internet. You can look it up. And if our priorities are not academic or athletic, then we have a missed set of priorities. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Good athletes breed good scholars. I will say you that. If you're an athlete, you strive harder when you're in the classroom, because if you don't get to be an athlete.
The classes depend on the population of each class. A, B, and C. Class A and B, and
Any other questions? Or before we, I know some of you have already spoken, we're starting to lose a crowd, but yeah, I can take. Yeah, one more.
Back to one thing. I'm not against academics. I believe in academics. I had 1 year way back when I went to the school. I took 2 years, in 1 year, 2 different courses in mathematics. And everybody today says, oh, that's great. I did that way back then. Long time before. I believe in academics. I believe that, yes, you should have a good grade before you play academics. And I also, like one person commented, that they go together. And one helps. If you've got good academics, then you can play. If you don't, you're not going to be able to play. And it helps keep up. Another thing, I hope that this year's budget, you don't cut out from little kids that like to play instruments in the elementary school up here in the community school. Because that also is like sports. They may not be able to play sports like that, not maybe physically strong enough to play it, or they don't want to play that kind of stuff. But they have something in the school form. And I hope they don't cut them out. I hope they haven't cut out either. That's something that should be retained. That should be something we're going to cut out this year or next year. I know taxes are high. We're in a hard time. I'm in a hard time too. But there are things I believe in and I'll fight for. As far as academics, if you really want to fix it, you're ready to pay the price and taxes. I can tell you how to do it. And a lot of people, I have all the teachers against me, but I know how to do it. And that's the same way they do in business. Teachers don't teach so many hours. That goes from morning to about 9 o'clock, almost like these magnet students. That's what they do. And they probably have a bachelor's, they probably have not a bachelor's degree, but a master's, every teacher. And everybody is on the same line because they go to their homes and they help those kids that are starting to slack fall back, they help them. So they're all on the same level field. If you really want to go that way, yes. But I know that you can't really get there. I hope it's high.
Thank you very much.